quarterly meeting. Seems like a busy meeting, a busy quarter, as we all, I certainly personally will get around the place, but it's great to be here. In Red, it's always a good day when you're in Gisborne. In fact, I still can't get over Waka Beach. Enjoyed the walk along there this morning, and I think everybody else must have been out because it probably was the first time been dry for a day or two. So it was great to see the community out enjoying it and walking down to your lovely swimming pool. That's all I'm good for these days, is a walk down to the pool and back. That's great. It was superb. Now, Josh, I normally would invite to open Karakia. Is there anybody else that would be able to open the Karakia? Can you do that, please, Red? That'd be lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, God, for bringing us together here today. Bless us as we make decisions on behalf of our community. Thank you for the privilege we have to work alongside each other. Please help us to make our community proud. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, so look, I do have apologies from Larry and from Josh.
I'm willing.
And you're willing? And thank you, Andy.
Larry's online.
Larry's online.
Oh, Larry's online?
Yeah.
There he is.
G'day, Larry. How are you?
Larry.
Are you? Oh, good. Oh, that's great to have you here, buddy.
Yep.
Two in the back.
Hey there, how things?
Larry, you were very quiet, Larry. If you want to be engaged, I hope we can hear you if that's possible.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
It's getting better. It's getting better. Thank you.
I'll speak loud. I'm not that best, not the best, I'm afraid, but anyway, I'll try and cope.
Okay, mate. Oh, well, we're going to scrub you off the apology list because you're actually here, which
Yes,
is
thank you.
And look, Rita, you probably see him better than I do from here. If Larry's hands up, because I'll encourage you to be engaged, Larry. So look, it's just to sustain Josh's apology. Thank you, Rita. Thank you. Andy, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. Is there any matter coming up that might run against your interests? Can I just note, I have not had the chance to be able to check with my son. Under PX, there is a matter that relates to MB doing a determination. My son works in the determination department, whatever they call it, division of MB. In fact, I was discussing with him in the weekend the ongoing risk, because I've had one with him, for interest clash, but he said, Dad, at the moment you're all clear. So I'm making the assumption that's not the case. The determination is not the cause of the debate here, so at this stage I just would like it noted that family connection with the determination function, but it's not affecting my capacity to be involved. If it got worrying, I'd get out. Minutes for the 26th of March. Any thoughts? Sorry, I'm going to move from the chair that we take them through it, correct? Yes. Second. Are there any matters that... Yeah, Rob. I'll second it. Oh, okay. I know you're a bit late, mate. You're a bit slow on the trigger finger there. That's already catered for. Are there any matters... It's off Josh. Are there any matters of accuracy or correctness we should note at this point?
No.
Good. So I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, it's carried. There were a couple of things in it that I enjoyed rereading, reminding myself of things, but I think they all basically get covered later in the meeting. That's actually fine from my perspective. Yep, no, it is. So we've got the governance work plan here. Pauline, is there anything you want to raise about it? It looks pretty good to me. It's enough. We've got a go, we'll do. I've got a meeting on 1 October. That'll have a strong focus around the annual report, I presume.
Yes, I don't have a meeting on the 10th of March. Yeah.
We can't have a meeting.
We have a meeting right in the middle of the election.
No, 1st of October.
Yes, the adoption of the
4
annual
days of
report.
campaigning.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see, yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't take that long to vote. Look, all I'm wanting to reflect there, and I just need to check, is that it's getting close to that reporting. Remind me, yeah, well, it's actually the closeout report. So the critical thing is we're trying to get the annual report for the elections, which is great. Tremendous tremendous that we're working that way. So the primary focus will be with our auditor and getting that, which would be great. And Kim, also, as you have today and last meeting, we've got some deep dives to go in that meeting as well, which is great. So tremendous to have those also.
Through the chair, the last item on the governance work program, the intent is for that to be wider than just cyber security,
right,
and actually be more our broader function associated with information services. Yeah. So we're just framing that up at the moment. And the idea is to have that as a periodic report, probably every 6 months, just to give some insights into that area of council in terms of its broader function around IT, hardware, cybersecurity, etc. So the team are just working on how that will shape up. It'll be an iterative process, so we'll bring the first one and happy to take feedback and sort of work forward from there. So I'm just having a little look at what other risk and audit type committees receive by way of that type of information, and I can have
a chat. Kim races with when I was able to catch up with her after our planned meeting, and I was stretched to be able to recommend somewhere good to go. I can give you good examples of cyber security reports, but the broader context, no. So James, it'll be great. I'm glad that you're wanting to go broader before we focus in on cyber security. That'd be really good.
Great, thank you.
That'd be superb. So we'll talk after. I just suddenly thought of one where we are talking the broader challenges of IT. Okay, look, I don't think we have to move a motion around the program, other than we just know it's sitting there and it's in good shape and good form. Leave of absences, don't have any. Acknowledgements and tributes, Ria.
Nothing I can think of. No one has raised anything.
Incredibly informal, but I was speaking. Oh, sorry.
Oh yes, Dame Ingrid. So one thing I can do in acknowledgement is our lovely Dame Ingrid Collins, who on Sunday we had the investiture at Whangaroa Marae. Proud day, and Whangaroa is punching above its weight with 1 sir and 2 dames from one tiny marae, and that's where the well rider was shot. That's the marae. So just a huge acknowledgement from all of us. It was a huge celebration, and we are just so incredibly proud.
And yes, Rob.
Yeah, I'd just like to acknowledge the loss of Marcus Beaufoy, the one in the community who was had done a lot for the community, and especially junior rugby and whatnot. So huge passing at a young age.
And informal, although that is, I bring the greetings of Lindsay McKenzie. I was speaking with Lindsay last night. He's just about finished his
How's he getting on?
tour of duty. Yes, okay. He
One piece?
yes, he is. Actually, if I can say it, Lindsay has done a really good job as Crown Observer at Wellington City. I presume all of you would know him in the room, former chief executive here. And he sends his best wishes, but he mentioned particularly you, Nadine, and Rianne, but to everybody as well. He's gone well. He finishes in July.
Oh, okay.
Once council's adopted the amended LTP, which will be this month. I think he's got a month to wrap up. So, as we all know with Lindsay, he's a good, solid, steady chap. And I mean that in all the best senses of the word, and I think that's been beneficial.
Yes, good man.
We do have a presentation, but I think I've got this correct, Pauline. We're 10:30, we're taking a break. This is really great, actually. Sorry, thank you that it's, I don't know whether this was just the first convenient meeting to have it at, but I think it's, I think actually as a risk committee, Pauline, it's good that we get some sense of the regulatory environment that will be over. The decision you get to still make, correct, but I mean the probable decision that you make around in-house delivery, and one of the critical things that the department have been using to scare councils is actually as an in-house delivery, you're still going to have the regulatory regime. So the biggest unknown, isn't it, is the Commerce Commission. So it'd be great to have them here, but that's now at 10:30. Are there any items of extraordinary business? I think there is. No notices of motion. adjourned business. I haven't got any adjourned business, so that gets us under the Comments Commission, which I've said we're going to hold over at 10:30. So that gets us straight into strategic risk management.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
Nice quiet voice. Can I encourage you to speak
louder.
up? Because we're going to make certain Larry can hear you. If that's okay, Kim.
sorry, guys, I will speak louder. Just really a highlight within this report is that I think we probably take it as read. We've looked at the strategic risks over a couple of meetings now, and we'll be looking at those that have residual risks of extreme in more detail in our deep dive sessions as we go through. So really, my main highlight from here is that we are working together behind the scenes strategically with the teams to look at those in detail and looking at those assessments. And that really has happened as a result of the policy and framework being adopted in April, and enabling us to roll out our planned scheduled work, basically. So the main thing that we're looking at now, in addition to that, to support that, is that we do have the reporting correctly and the assessments in a correct and smart format that we can work with our teams and our risk owners together. We're also developing internal communications material and roll out to bring that in line and embed what we have at strategic level at a more operational level. The report touches on that, which is operational, but without the strategic hierarchy and the guidance behind that within our policy and framework, we wouldn't have been able to deliver that. So that's the current work that we're working on at the moment. You'll also note in the report we have changed the format slightly just to make it a little bit more visual and easier for you to understand within the summary without going through to that detail, and just looking at how it makes things a little bit easier for you to look at very quickly and understand what's going on there. But the deep dive sessions are the key to all of this in terms of looking at those strategic risks that we have considered as extreme in the past and looking at the controls that we have in place in terms of moving those moving them down closer towards our moderate risk appetite as a council. So that's really all I have to say on this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. As you said, you take us read, and it was a very easy read. You gave me a few diagrams, which I love. Right, do we have firstly comments or questions for Kim? Yes,
I just have one comment. Thank you, Kim. It reads so beautifully. It is really a report that stands out. You can immediately see where your eyes need to go. And I was thinking of all these risks and the extreme and the serious, but I was heartened to read in your report on page 21 and 22 that we will do the Gabrielle recovery deep dive in October as well, and then our natural environment one, because I think it is it's time for us to look into that Gabrielle recovery and have a good nut out of what's going, how we did, what we can do different, what are the risks still. I had to catch up with Nomai yesterday in the recovery office, and we always need to be ready, but we can be more ready if we look back and see what are those risks still lingering and how do we deal with that. So I just wanted to thank you for bringing that to our agenda in October.
And if I can add through the chair, we are planning a workshop with Jocelyn and her team mid-July to look at this in more detail and really align it with where we're currently thinking we can have this and where we're currently at as a council.
Thank you, Kim. Any other questions at this stage? Look, there is quite a bit that we need to do in the deep dive today, but I think given we've got this on public record, which is good, as in we're talking about this in public, I think there's just a question that we should try and answer in public, which is actually that extreme is outside our appetite. So to be clear, financial risk, Gabrielle, infrastructure, natural environment, and we've got some good, actually quite an expanded piece there on treaty commitments. So that's fine. But I think the point I wanted to reflect is how did we got to a position yesterday. We're in Hamilton, very similar sort of listing, by the way. So this is a very local government common occurrence at the moment, and we decided we were comfortably uncomfortable, which meant that we felt like we were under control. But the question has to be asked if we're outside appetite, and we'll explore in our deep dives what we're doing about it. But actually, I think what I'm trying to reflect here is there anything that is screaming at us that we need to do at the moment, other than monitor, given that we are outside risk. You know where I'm going. My point is, are we doing enough when we're in such an extreme situation, 4 out of 10 or whatever it is in that position?
I think when the risk owners, through the chair, I think when risk owners do present their deep dives and show you their current working programs and the controls that they have in place, you will be seeing a move towards moderate. So I think in those, we have seen a change. We're assessing them more closely, but I think you will see in our next report in October that there will be changes in down, given the conversations I've had with the teams and the risk owners.
Right. Okay.
Not necessarily on all of those, but where we've got to within the deep dives.
Yeah, Nadine.
Yeah, and I think through the chair, it's important to recognise that those risks that are still outside the risk appetite are inherently complex and uncontrollable, and so it's very much representative of a process that we're going on to try and control as far as practically possible within the realms of our control those risks and managing them down. So you're always going to have a degree of extraordinary risk levels in those particular ones.
I actually, sorry, come to your role. I agree with you, and as some sort of warning for the deep dive session, I have looked at the controls, or the causes, what are within our capacity to control, and what aren't. And these generally are matters that is showing the weight of external factors influencing us outweighs what we can do about it in some sense, if that makes sense. And I think that's true, albeit that we should never use that as a pass card on making certain what we do, or what we control is actually delivering. Okay, cool. Rob, sorry, I was.
Yeah, my question was around that, and hopefully we will cover it in the dive session. Was around. You look at some of these things and you think, well, how are we ever going to move from that position down to that? And I'm just wondering whether or not, as part of a deep dive session, we actually look at the settings. Are the settings right to actually trigger these things? Because what the settings that were there to trigger going into a moderate to major, from major to extreme, 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago, are they relevant? That sort of thing. Because if we're just going to sit here and see this continually for without having the ability to move it, then maybe our settings aren't.
Well, thank you, Rob. And that's why I'm saying we can't pass into PX without having the public debate. Is this sustainable? So you've got the consequence tables in there. I must confess, why were they there? Is there a question around, because the consequence tables which are at the bottom of the public report are really important, because that's determining in lots of ways, along with likelihood we are, why we're red, why we're extreme. So your question is, are they actually painting a worse picture, possibly, than we are really in at the moment? Any thoughts on that, Kim?
Well, through the chair, the consequence settings are reviewed regularly. We recently updated that potentially within the people section, this category, but also it's an opportunity in connection with new council to refresh that as well. Because consider a workshop in the new year, that's what we look at and addressing the strategic risks. So there is a pattern that we also are regularly looking at those settings to see if they are current and to go through. That piece of the appetite settings are used alongside any assessments that we have within the teams when we're looking at the strategic risks. So it's basically a living document that we use as a reference tool, alongside our table.
Just to comment on that, I just wonder whether or not this is something that becomes a bit of a priority for this council to leading into a new council coming in, depending on who's sitting around the table. I just wonder whether or not that's, dealing with this for a while now, people understand the reasons why this has happened. I'm just wondering whether this is something we should be addressing as this council.
So remind me, Kim, we're obviously today receiving the updated financial risk built on the back of what we've done. We're hopefully looking at if Tim's health will allow him to do that. We'll have a look at infrastructure asset management. And next, in October, we're going to deal with what, sorry?
We're going to be looking at the Gabrielle recovery,
Yep.
and natural environment.
Natural environment. So, Rob, I'd like to suggest actually in our October meeting, I know it's getting close to elections, I wonder if that's not a time when we spend 10 minutes just standing back. We'll do, by that stage, we will have looked at the 4 big red ones. And Rob, I wonder if that's a good time then just to spend 10 minutes and just stand back and perhaps leave a statement that's helpful for the incoming council. It would seem like a good time to do that. Would that seem feasible for you? It might take us an extra half hour of the meeting, but I think I like the idea. I'm open to that. So, okay. Any other questions or comments from folks on the stage? Colin.
Thanks, Bruce. So yes, at last meeting we spent about 40 minutes discussing the uncomfortableness of sitting in the red zone, and how, as councillors, we feel so unempowered. And putting it off to another meeting and in this afternoon, hopefully we can start addressing some of these issues. I'm constantly getting told off for stepping over that line of governance into operations. But at what point do operations take notice of our discomfort? There's my question.
I think they do, but I probably need to look at you, Nadine. Is there an answer to that?
So through here, the response is that it's the staff take note. How can I put this? You're a collective, not individuals. And so we take instruction from the collective of the committee, not as individual councillors that have a particular issue. So if there is a collective concern about where the risk is sitting or direction that is one thing, then that depends on what you're talking about or an example you can give me, because I'm just kind of flying blind here. But that is generally how we work. Otherwise, we're responding to 14 individuals.
Well, there was at least three of the members of this committee were showing their discomfort at the previous meeting.
Can you just highlight that for us again? Because I was at the meeting, I can't remember that. What was that about?
Just about the inability, our discomfort of being in the red zone, in particular in the finance one. Right, that was my main concern. That spins into all other zones. And yet our inability to do anything about it other than check the fact that we're in the red zone. And from that point, it is up to management to try and make some moves towards helping us get out of that zone.
Sorry, through the chair, so we're referring to our risk appetite and what we're doing to manage the risks in that space. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, I guess. And that, how do you manage the risk in that appetite?
Yeah, so that's a point of the deep dive session where you interrogate or ask questions about how those risks being effectively managed. Right. And that is a place where we will also say, as part of this, that risk area is that there are some things inherently uncontrollable, because there will be, for example, through the local rules done well, that wasn't something that was within our control at the time it came through. So that's the point, that's the place where you ask the questions. And also going back to from Councillor Taufa in terms of let's also review those things, because they might not be in the right place.
So I assume that is the deep dive public excluded?
Yep.
Right, okay.
So just an observation through the chair. In terms of financials as well, there's a correlation between the other items that sit in the red.
Yeah.
So you can't lose sight of, we've got Gabrielle recovery, infrastructure, a natural environment, those are all sitting in the red. And when you have those things in the red, you'll be very lucky if finance isn't in the red either. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that aspect. Yeah.
I think, Colin, and I was hoping perhaps at the end of the meeting with the Dean we might have a chat, but there's a few things that I talked about, those which are influencing local government, which make it difficult for elected members, okay? And this is not complete, but I would note our financial strategy is heavily affected by the position of our primary funder, NZTA. And that's not dumping on government, but I'm reflecting that the nature of the size of the fund is and what they're prepared to fund is critical. We know that too well here, don't we? And it's not just influencing Gabrielle recovery, it's influencing our strategy around our normal ability to renew our assets. Look, in Southland, we're talking about putting roads back into gravel. We're serious about it now. Yes, but we're darn serious because we are going backwards down there in our capacity to renew, given the funding position of NZTA. Not blaming anybody, it is where we are at. So again, it goes back to your point, Josh. Those sorts of externalities affect, and I suspect we'll find out this afternoon, from our infrastructure asset management and our capacity to do what we can do around renewals. I think the RMA will feature large for us when we get to the natural environment, but again, the changes that are occurring there are actually moving the grip of councils away from self-determination of the environment, in my view. That's a Robertson statement, but I could back that up with examples, particularly in the territorial area as well. I think there are other things that we have to consider also in the pipeline that worry me about our capacity. So, if the political will is genuine that we will have to live with a rate cap, that's going to change these. You know, the risk, the prospect of a rate cap worries me. Okay, because that makes the financial risk, the infrastructure risk, probably even our natural environment risk, substantially impacting all levels of service to our community. So there's things, Colin, that your colleagues around the country, and I suspect you see this when you go to LGNZ or Taituara, the Dean, is where a lot of elected members feel powerless. And I don't want to say that there's no politics wrapped up in that. I'm just trying to reflect what are the moving cogs in the local governments and the balls in the air, I'm trying to get my analogy right. Yes.
And it is so true what you say. We can try as a group to have controls in place. We can, as a group, try and have our risks, identify them and have possible levers to address it. But there's a huge unknown coming our way. And, you know, just what you highlighted earlier, there's so much government intervention, I think, and I hope with good intent, to help councils and communities move forward in sustainable ways. There will be unintended consequences though, and we will be on the receiving end. But I think we are doing what we can at this stage to try and be ready for when other demands. 10:30 this morning, we're going to hear stuff coming our way. Our economic regulator, our taumata arawai, all regulations put on councils, the RMA changes. Minister Bishop just this morning spoke about government. I'm not sure if you heard it.
I haven't heard, no.
I
was out walking and seeing
I heard someone else mentioning it on that there will be, he was speaking at the business group in Wellington, that with the RMA housing type changes, there will be a clause in the RMA where the government can interfere if they feel councils are stopping economic development. So there are lots of levers that the government are pulling, but we are blind to it at this stage. There's been some signals, but I'm confident that as a council, we are trying as best as we can in very tough times, to have the controls there to look after our risks.
I'd reflect one thing, and that, you know, you are operating under a 3-year plan, and you're going to have to go pretty soon into what? When do you start your LTP
Next
planning?
June.
You do already, are you?
Next June.
Next June. If you aren't doing it by next June, you're late, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know, basically, is the story. Your financial strategy, the determination of your financial strategy is going to be so critical. And that will include views about how much you as elected members are prepared to vote the Dean and the team. To be honest, if you want an efficiency drive, you better win the table. And there will be a resultant impact. Some councils, I'd say, are in that position where they felt like they needed to. And I won't name the councils, but there's a number of restructurings going on. I don't want to say that's the solution, it is for them. But I want to think that within the year, you're going to have to be starting to signalling what is the financial strategy for the council. It'll be a difficult time, I expect, because of those externalities. It's driven by those externalities that are coming in. Okay, thank you for that, Colin. I suspect you'll keep us gingered up over that. So I think that's why I wanted Colin to have on public record just our acknowledgement about the red nature, given it's the colour of those. We have got a program in place to try and deal and understand those, and have we got the right controls. As I said, I think when we get to the deep dive, we need to look carefully. What are we doing? Are the controls that we have, are they adequate? We need to devote more resource to it. We need to reprioritise. We'll get to that, as well as also externalities. Was there anything else? And having said that, was there anything else people want to raise around this? I would be interested at some stage. I was interested in paragraph 6, just to be reminded what our objectives are. And that's always a key point. Do our top risks address what our objectives are? Simply from my perspective, but I actually just wanted to recognise, I know I'm talking a lot here, but if I just go back, if I just step back a bit, I've been trying to sell Gisborne's risk management framework around the country. It is a good one. Can I say that?
Thank you.
You guys have a good one, and Kim has had to have a number of people run to her door and say, "Oh, look, Bruce says you've got a good risk management framework. Can I copy it, please?"
I hope you're selling it for a commission.
Well, we might beg, borrow, and sell a few things off others as well. I think that's where this one came from. Really. So I think it might be more a swapsy going on here.
We all work together.
But the framework is stellar. That we can work to, and I think we're seeing the benefit of it here. But what I am just reflecting is actually somewhere, and it will be with, I think, the new council, Kim. We need to take these objectives, and admittedly they could change also with your LTP, but actually just do that sort of work we did with Vaughan, but we did with PwC previously. Are these still relevant? Why are they still relevant? Do they still fit with our objectives? Okay, I think they do at this stage, so I'm comfortable, but I just want to pull that out. So what and I want to, on 14, if I can just signal, I think I said this to you, Pauline, this morning, under paragraph 14, I was looking to, I am looking to see how do we convert our understanding around our risk environment. I think I've got the right paragraph there, the controls we have in place, with the assurance we as a committee can have those controls are actually operating. And we'll come back to that when we look at it, but I'm looking here to see how do we marshal our internal audit resource to give us some assurance that our controls are actually operating and are effective. So we can look at that when we go through it. So look, well done. I think that's useful at this stage, Kim. It's a bit of a yes, this is what we were at. Let's also get into those deep dives as we go through it. So there's no other questions or comments from folk. Let's go to the I think it's one of those resolutions. It's always
No.
seems insufficient to we are happy to move that. Thank you. And do I have a second, please? Thank you, Andy. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, we carry. Terrific. I think is it 10:30? I was just thinking about.
It's 10:10.
Oh, it's 9:30. Yeah, you grabbed 5 minutes. I've lost an hour in my day. Isn't that terrible? Okay, radio. Sorry, if we now move then on to our next item, which is the Waka Kotahi investment audit.
I can talk to it.
Can you do that? Yeah, please, that'd be great.
To some of the things, and if there's other technical issues, it's also in mine. But this is just a kind of a little bit of the review. It notes that this was a 3-year review that NZTA has completed. This is also on the back of the audit report they did for the emergency works with Gabrielle. That also occurred. So in terms of that, you're talking 120 million over the course of the 3 years under the review here. And subsequent to that, there was the emergency works straight after Gabrielle up to October 23, which was at 70 million. So there's 2 substantive audits that have been completed by NZTA as a review of the roading program. It says overall that there's appropriate controls in place for the monitoring and managing of all systems, and but they noted that there were some improvement, which is the kind of the moderate, the next stage on effective, and the next one is some improvements, which always as part of the kind of review, you take what it is, what can we exchange. So it itemised what they were, and also says that the appropriate actions have been taken in place. And then just to bring your attention to what Bruce had stated, how do you know that they, how do we check those actions, and how do we we record them and schedule them? So on 21, there's a little bit of a table. It says this is the responsible person. They say that these are in place. And then as part of that, there will be a reviews to see that those controls are in action, and then those reviews. So it says who it is, where it occurs, and where it occurs from at least from an annual basis, checking back in and reporting back up. So you'll see that regularly now, as we'll start to say what are the actions, where are the different parts coming through, and you'll see the schedules associated with that and checks and balances. But happy to take any questions, and I'm sure Tim will be happy to answer any questions in terms of it.
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, just on point 19 and 20, page 39. I just see in the, as part of the audit process around this SESA Safe System audit, there was 5 selected improvement projects, and of those 5, only 1 was found to be found to fully meet the requirements. And when you look at some of the things, missing signatures, lack of documentation, I just wonder if that's 1 in 5, that's 80%. So there was only 5 picked out of what's the total number out there. So it is quite concerning. So I just want a bit of a commentary around that. That's all.
Tim, are you able to? How's your voice, mate?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Thank you, Tim. You're great. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Yeah, so we follow a process which when we let contracts, the issues identified now should all be in place. I think the items they are mentioning here relate to when there may have been decisions made related to direct appointments. Is that correct, Rob?
Well, it just says around SSA, the Safe System Audit. So they picked out 5 specific projects, and of those 5, only 4 met complied. So I just looked at it and thought, well, there's just been a random 5 picked out of what number, and so it was sort of a little bit, I suppose, alarming to say.
I think if I could help Rob, Tim, I think your point is made, because one of the critiques of the 4 that didn't meet it was no safe system audit complete or no exemption documentation on file. Oh no, sorry, I was thinking about, you talked about direct procurement. We don't actually have the information as to what were the issues, I think, that were actually picked up other than the sort of general statement. Would it be fair to say, Tim, these appear to be, how do we keep our nose clean, rather than necessarily any underlying fundamental problems with our work? Is that oversimplifying the critique from the report?
I don't think so. I think that would be fair. I think also in times of stress and duress, you can easily miss small items, and the pressure on at particular times, particularly in the last couple of years. I don't think there's any excuse for this now in our present processes. We've certainly lifted and improved our whole procurement cycle. We still have continuing work to do all the time with contract management, and that is not only within our own organisation, but also with our construction, our contracting partners, both sides of the fence here. So, but certainly I think, if anything, our responses to the same questions now ought to be better than what's presented in item 20 here.
Yes, Colin.
Thank you. Tim, just on that sort of 17 contract management area, and also relating back to some of these issues where 5 out of 8 break the rules, which I'll come back to in a minute. But of these investigated procurement exercises, what portion were in-house and what portion were externally managed?
Sorry, I don't have an information. What portion of contracts were internally managed and externally managed? Is that the question, Colin?
This investigation includes not only in-house jobs, but also those jobs managed by consultants. Am I correct? Mm-hmm. Right, thank you. And then going back up to...
Sorry, can I just interrupt? No, it's not. It's only the contracts that we have, the physical contracts that they had as part of their audit, which would maybe for the ones that are on a network, the maintenance network, or anyone that's actually physically working on the contracts. That's what that is talking about. It's not consultants or professionals, it's actually physical contracts per se that's working maintenance on the network.
But they might be being managed by either directly by council staff or directly by
This is a BAU work. This is the BAU program. So the majority, I would say, unless Tim can say otherwise, it's always managed in-house.
Okay, because it hints that some of them are capital, some were maintenance, and some were renewal contracts. And I know a lot of the renewal contracts are being managed by consultants, I believe.
Now, again, that's sorry, David. I'll leave it to you, Tim.
Yeah, I can respond. For me, it should matter little whether it's managed by internally or consultants. I'm not sure what the question is, Colin.
Okay. I was just trying to take the pressure off you, Tim.
Right. Yeah.
My next question relates sort of to around number 13, where 5 of the 8 where This included 5 variations, so variations to the contract that were awarded and showed significantly increased value to the original. That's concerning. I have investigated in my term here, I've investigated 3 procurement processes, and of the 3, every one of them had significant variations added at the end. Also noting that above point that in the workshops, they mention that that they appear to have focused on variations and that trying to point out to staff which variations were not appropriate. And this suggests that this is an area that needs further investigation. I would like to see a report done on more than just 8 jobs. I'd like to see a significant chunk of jobs investigated to see how many have added variations to them and whether this is a potential significant leak in our procurement process.
So there's 2 things here. Sorry, I got a couple of comments. Andy, you first.
Yeah, just, I mean, surely that's answered in the paragraph itself. 80% of these were due to the contract significantly changing after Cyclone Gabriel, or immediate response of scope of work was increased. Surely that's the answer.
That is the answer.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, I'd like it investigated. But certainly none of the 3 I looked at had anything to do with cyclones.
Well, it's different. We're talking here.
We're talking about cyclone.
About the NZTA report.
Yes. Not your own investigations.
You had a point to make, Pauline?
Yeah, just that the bulk of the 120 million is the contracts that does our maintenance work. You know, the bulk of what we do, 30 million per annum, is resided in those 4 main contracts. And so you're not going to have, in terms of the things, in terms of materiality, you are going to be looking at the bulk of those contracts and how they actually awarded what to do. So where it says they won't, where they do their testing is what is the concern. So if there's any elements of concerns, and part of a normal audit is that we test more. So of the $120 million, they tested and did the reviews, and these are the things that they actually found. So it's kind of disproportionate in terms of what you're actually talking about, because the majority of the work is the maintenance contracts that actually is fulfilling 120 million.
And I wonder if you could just clarify for me, either Tim or Pauline, please. So we've got this, if we go to the attachment, we've got the summarised section. And so there are some, there are areas noted here for improvement. Overall, what are we under greater scrutiny from NZTA? Did we pass?
So it's basically, the majority of it is fully effective. There are just some levels of that's needing for improvement. When we said we looked at that, it was less than 4% of the total the claim. So it's a minimum, and most of the administration matters. And then the other part of it, it says we've already taken the actions that they've recommended and put in place. So the materiality and the things that they're talking within there is kind of the smaller parts of the whole of the works that has been.
Thank you for that. I think that's about. I'm sorry, I was really trying to get a proportion here. The fact that they've come through, we have passed them, but they're obviously going to be keen to check that we fix things up, which will include.
Yep. I have a couple of comments on variations and appreciate the questions from Councillor Older. When I've managed programs over time, variations are expected in general. The only way you wouldn't get them is if you were perfectly scoping at the outset your range of projects. So what you're tending to be looking for is variations that don't have the right documentation and approvals and consideration with them. That's one. And the second thing you're looking for is projects with zero variations, which is also something you should be looking at, and people don't. Because if you've got zero variations on a project, I'm actually more concerned about it than ones with particularly the nature of our work, where you can only really get your work scope to the 90 sort of percentile, and you're always going in with a little bit more. There's usually a large gap between the first incidents and the next. So, and with roading infrastructure, things have changed recently. With Wharikahika Bridge, for instance, we've had a storm event where we have original contract, but there's been another storm event and another amount of work, which might be a 25% additional variation. So there's a number of things we're looking for, but one of them is a calm spot on the surf beach where there is no variations at all, and those are things we're also worried about. So, Councillor, correct, but the variations are usually the most scrutinised parts of contracts as well. So that's something else that's worth mentioning for everyone as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That's helpful information.
Yes, Rob, just one thing on my comment Tim made I found quite interesting was around looking at some of these contracts, going back and looking at some of these contracts that had no variations, because that potentially can be showing you that maybe the pricing was higher than it should have been in the first place, and maybe that's where you're getting some. But like if there's no variations at the end of the job, because there are things that always happen that no one could foresee, so they are worth looking at, those ones, because so much leeway in the contract to start with. Of course, they're going to come in without any variations.
Yeah, well, so Councillor Telfer is correct. What I'm saying there is you expect some variations to show a healthy market, and because you're dealing with many projects, you expect to see. So that's exactly what we do and look for.
So the recommendations, Tim, have been fully accepted by the council. I asked the obvious, but I mean, essentially we're agreeing that these findings are reasonable. We are going to do something about them, including some specifics, Pauline, which you've noted there, which will involve internal audit around a couple of key aspects. So Tim, we've basically agreed and we're going to fix them, right?
Yeah, we're definitely working towards improving the outcomes on those items that they've listed for us, absolutely, as well as maintaining the other areas where we have improved.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yes, Rob?
Just noting there already has been workshops held.
That's right.
Addressing a lot of those things, so it's a work in progress.
Yeah. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Rob. I'll put the motion that we receive the report and note the contents. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. David. You're there. Sorry, I was looking over the back. Welcome. Health and safety.
Good morning, all. Nice to be here. Through the chair, the report has been read. In summary, I've just got a few points. One is we continue to focus on critical risks and staff wellbeing, pretty much aligned to the regulator's approach. Good news is that abuse for the last quarter seems to be down on reported incidents. Behavioural issues, unfortunately, are going up. So we've still got that concern for staff around multiple facilities. I'll point you to section 36 and specifically the firearms review that we're just going through at the moment. Firearms, we've got 3 teams that have access to, one the majority of biosecurity. So we're just making sure that we've got good controls in place, they're effective and they're working. That's pretty much in summary, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. So, do you have questions for David in terms of this report?
One thing that struck me, Dave, was how sometimes you think of council, you don't think of people using firearms.
That's right.
And it was an eye-opener to me to again be reminded that we have teams that use firearms all the time and the safety around that. So thank you for that. I really appreciated that.
Yes, and different thing to read through it. David, recovery works. So we sections paragraph 13 through 16. Note on the 16, due to suspension workload and elevated levels of outsourcing required for recovery, development of health and safety management systems remain a key focus. Can you just clarify for me what you're doing there, please?
Yeah.
Obviously, this is provide, this is often provide PCBU territory, etc. So, Chris, just can you give me some of the bare bones of what that means?
Yeah. What I have noticed is it's taken quite a lot of the time up in relation to doing the post-Gabrielle recovery work, which is normal business really. The large woody debris element, I think we're more involved in that. We have regular meetings with Logic Forest Solutions that have been engaged to carry out the health and safety oversight of the contractors on site. We're getting out, myself and Purpi, getting out to actually do those joint assurance and verification visits for large woody debris. The other element of it is the rest of the recovery works, fossil works, culverts and roading, which falls under the duress of Tim's team. And Murray Campbell is actually overseeing that area at the moment. And that is something I've got visibility on in relation to reports that are coming through on a weekly and monthly basis. And those reports are elevated to Nadine. So we've got good visibility over what is going on in that quite high risk area. There's a lot of work going on. Contractors are doing great work.
When we say our standard operating or our procedures are being continuously enhanced, I presume from that as matters arise or even if voice comes to us, incidents occurs, you're already saying we're in a learning environment. We will upgrade, we'll add on, we will change our procedures, etc. as matters arise.
Yeah, it's about continual improvement and the reporting. We're actually streamlining it and introducing new elements of what the information is that we require that gives us that trend analysis, etc.
So to put it in words of sort of comfort, and I don't know whether a health and safety boss should ever be comfortable, but let's use that word. You might tell me there's a better word. You're comfortable that you talk about a bespoke framework and reporting approach around our recovery works. You're comfortable that on the whole they're working well. These enhancements or these learnings are adding to what is a good and effective system rather than making them good and effective. Do you understand that? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm comfortable with what we're doing and how we're going about it. There are changes of staff and changes of setups which are always going towards the continued improvement of streamlining it to give me the comfort that I can actually elevate to the senior lead team.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I'm just checking another question, but probably like it. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Colin and then Andy.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, David. With the graphs, the two graphs, I don't need to be able to relate to each other. The two graphs on page 56. But one's showing a definite downward trend, and the other one, by a month, doesn't necessarily show a downward trend.
Sorry, Colin, which one are you referring to then?
So the top graph, which is recordable injury frequency rate.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Like August, for example, it's 5. So does that mean 5 recordable injuries in August 24? And then you go down to August 24 below, and there's a total of 3 injuries recorded. On that next graph down, when it's injury by class, is it?
Yeah, they're two quite different. The total recordable injury frequency rate works it out over 200,000 hours. So every time we do 200,000 hours, the lost time injuries and medical treatments are reflective of how we're going over a 12-month cumulative period. The graph below is basically the injuries that actually happened. The ones in red are the lost time injuries, and they're the ones that actually get recognised in that total incident recordable rate. So the fact that the top graph is going down is a positive for us, saying we're getting injuries still, but we're not getting the serious injuries.
Serious injuries is what's important.
Which is the key ones here.
Thank you. And it's a question I might have asked before, I've forgotten the answer, but we used to get a graph showing the contractor injuries by contractor by month.
Yes.
Is it?
It's something I'm still working on with Tim and the team from Recovery Stream. As mentioned, we get so many contractors and new contractors coming in. We find it very difficult to get difficult. We find it challenging to get information on time and accurate. And I'm not prepared to give the council information that I'm not comfortable with myself. So we're still doing some work behind the scenes on that. And I believe in the next month or the next report, we'll have some better information on contractors individually than the instance they're involved in.
Well, could we ask for the report to be delivered regardless of whether an entity has delivered the reports, and then mark the entities which haven't delivered their required information, so we can see who's not delivering their required information?
Something we can actually certainly talk about outside this meeting. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, David.
Just a note on that too, is that our contractor environment doesn't always remain static. So there's a bit of a revolving door, particularly in the small contractors environment. So trying to get everyone to a sort of an equilibrium of reporting remains a challenge as well. But certainly we know it's something that's a continuous work on for us, and the team are working really hard behind the scenes to get it to a point where it's reportable. Yeah.
There are some big boards out there that we should be seeing, though, isn't there?
Indy, sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Page 47, under 4, all workers are encouraged to report accidents and near misses, and also that the app is available, which staff are encouraged to use. Uptake remains encouraging. Sometimes the words matter, and I'm not sure if it matters in this, but shouldn't they be compelled to report incidents? Encouragement seems to be a little bit of a voluntary word.
I think in every employee's job description, it's a requirement to, mandatory required to report accidents, incidents and near misses. So it is pretty much standard, you will do that. However, we do struggle sometimes with people realising that the importance of reporting, and we do find some under-reporting that has happened. So that's why I've worded encourage, because we're always encouraging people to actually do what they should be doing in their job descriptions, and that is report accidents, incidents and near misses. Same with the contractors. Yeah.
Thank you.
Try our best. Yeah.
Thank you, appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? We move to the resolutions, please. Thank you for your report, Dave, which is that we would note. Thank you, Colin. Do I have a second? Thank you, Rob. Motion, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against? It's carried. Righty.
Larry's got his hand up.
Oh, Larry. Sorry, Larry. Thank you for pointing that out. I hadn't seen your hand. You're behind me. So go for it, Larry.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm thinking I've got some IT problems, but can you actually see me?
I can, yep. And I can hear you, which is even better.
Okay, no, that's fine because I can't. Yeah, well, I've got some technical issues happening here, so I wasn't quite sure. I just wanted to verify that. Okay, thanks. I'm listening in and happy with everything so far. So
Good.
thank you.
Good. I'd be in a difficult position if you were unhappy at this stage. So just a couple of resolutions along the way, Larry. It's no worry at all. Well, if we will just keep pressing on, is that we will take the motion to move into public excluded.
Public excluded.
And do I have a seconder, please? Andy?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Look, Charlotte, my apologies. I hadn't realised that you were waiting in the wings. We were dealing with some other business. We've been into our public excluded portion of the session, and I hadn't realised, sorry, as chair, that you were there. So
that's okay, Mr. Chair. You've kindly accommodated a change from me this morning in timelines too, so no apologies required.
Charlotte, my name's Bruce Robertson, by the way. I'm the independent chair of the Risk Committee. I suspect you know at least Mayor Red Stoltz and Chief Executive Nardine and some of the others that are in the room. But it's our Risk Committee here at Gisborne. And so we were very appreciative. The Commerce Commission was on its horse talking to people about actually economic regulation. So, Pauline, I'm happy to invite Charlotte at this stage to, I think you've got a presentation that you're going to share with us, Charlotte. It'd probably be easier to let you just have the floor, introduce and move through your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, look, thanks. I'm very happy to do that. We've found it's quite a good way to get sort of a baseline level of understanding of what we're doing and then to ask questions from there. But feel free to interrupt at any time. And I'll put that up now. Let me know once you can. Sorry. Let me know once you can see my screen.
Yep, we're good to go. Thank you, Charlotte.
Charlotte? Great. And get that into presentation mode and we will be underway. So thanks very much for having me along this morning. Hopefully you will have heard of the Commerce Commission in one way, shape or form. So we have quite a wide remit as an organisation covering the zone of competition, fair trading. At the moment, we have a consumer credit function and we carry out economic regulation of essentially monopoly services in New Zealand. So those responsibilities cover everything from telecommunications and energy networks. We ask for information about transport fuel prices and increase disclosure there. We have a role in the banking retail payment system, some roles in grocery. I'm told we set the farm gate price for Fonterra. You will have seen potentially some of our work in the Auckland airport space recently, and now the government has decided that we'll have a role in water as well. We are an independent Crown entity. That means that we can take the decisions that we think are best from that independent stance. So whilst we have accountability to ministers, that does mean that sort of we're one step removed from them, which is a really privileged place to be as an organisation. We look to promote competition throughout the economy with the tools available to us. As we will be doing in water, we're looking at influencing performance so that New Zealanders get better essential services. And we work in the space of tackling harm from unfair trade and irresponsible lending, like pyramid schemes and the like to vulnerable customers. So of the four main outcomes we look for as an organisation, we always think that the top and the bottom ones have the most relevance to water. So the first is around stewardship, that New Zealanders, including Māori, have trust and confidence in the systems that we're involved in. And then customers are getting both quality and value from the services that they don't have a choice over who provides and are essential to life. We know that there's a lot of people working in the wider water landscape already. So we are working very closely, particularly with Taumata Arawai, as we set our first set of requirements, and also the Department of Internal Affairs. And we're growing our relationships, particularly with regional councils and the Office of the Auditor General as well. We usually find it's useful to set out a little bit around our governance expectations. So I mentioned stewardship previously, and the Commission's purpose statement when it comes to monopoly services, including water, is to ensure the long-term interest of consumers. So we do take a long-term view on things. We take a long-term view on intergenerational payment, for example, of assets. We will be looking for improvements in data quality to support improved asset management, to support improved investment planning as well. We'll be looking to organisations to be meeting the reasonable expectations of their stakeholders. So sometimes I get asked whether the Commission, if we are involved in a price setting process, would support investment that is requested by communities, but perhaps has a higher level of service than is legislated. I've been asked that more times since the wastewater standards were published. So, you know, the Commission hasn't taken any decisions on that, but the economic regulators I've worked with overseas have taken a fairly economic approach to that. So if consumers can be demonstrated as willing to pay for those benefits, then the economic regulator would typically allow for that in prices. I mentioned the quality of data briefly, and what we encourage organisations, I think this is particularly relevant at an Audit and Risk Committee, is to think about the information that we are requesting and that you're providing to us. We will ask for assurance, so external audit of some of that information. But we will also ask for certification, probably by council laws, so your equivalent to directors, in terms of signing off the accuracy and appropriateness of the information that's been provided to us. So when you think about the data within your organisation, you might have multiple data sources telling you different things, and understanding which of those data sources is providing the information that you should be using for decision making within your organisation and also providing to the outside world. So that is something that I'm encouraging councils to think about as they're preparing for our regime. We also have a role in relation to the ring fence, and I understand that's something you're particularly interested in speaking about with us today. So the Commission's role is to monitor and enforce the ring fence in the way that Bill 3 is providing at the moment. We will see the RT version, so the next version of the bill, in a couple of weeks on the 4th of July. We expect that there could be some changes in our role in ring fencing there, but we still expect that we will have a role in that ring fencing space, and that's really around ensuring that the government's the government's policy that water revenue is spent on water services is being carried out in practice. So the Commission has got an initial tool under Bill 3 called information disclosure. That's a posh word for saying that we will be requiring organisations to publish information that we prescribe. So we released a discussion document on this in February 2025, and that covers the scope of things that we would normally ask for in our information disclosure requirements. Bill 3 will require us to set our initial requirements around 6 months after it's passed. And when we set those requirements, it is a piece of secondary legislation. So compliance with that legislation is compulsory. The requirements are likely to build on the information provided in the water service delivery plans where we think that makes sense. And they'll cover the range of things that are up on the screen here. In requiring organisations to publish information, we also use that information to analyse it and summarise it and play that back so that consumers can understand whether they're getting value for money from the organisations that they are being served by. So this is an example of analysis that we do in the electricity line sector, which is an interactive map that people can go to and understand how their service compares with that provided by others. And over time, we will build a similar tool and model for the water sector. So information disclosure is our first tool. We have another couple of tools that are expected to be also available to us as soon as Bill 3 passes. The first of those is the ability to set revenue thresholds. So we could set minimum or maximum revenue thresholds that they're non-binding, so organisations wouldn't be required to comply with them, but they would be setting our expectations around what we think the appropriate level of revenue is. And if an organisation failed to meet those revenue thresholds, then that could be a trigger for us to apply an additional tool from our toolkit here. I mentioned that we have a role in relation to the ring fence. That also includes the ability to require a specific portion of revenue to be spent on a particular asset, expense category, project or program. So I feel I should say at this point that the Commission is unlikely to utilise these detailed tools where we don't see that there's harm, but if there is evidence of the long-term interests of consumers not being met, then these tools are quite targeted and focused on enabling us to support that for consumers when necessary. There are 3 other tools that are signalled here as required after designation. So that means that the Commission would make a recommendation to the Minister. We need to consult on that recommendation before it goes to the Minister. So there's quite a clear and consultative process on us applying additional tools or requesting additional tools from the Minister. They then need to sign those off to apply. So quality regulation. I know it's quite hard to understand how Additional quality standards could exist in a world where we already have resource consents and taumata arawai operating, but the economic regulator would usually set consumer-oriented quality standards. So examples that I've seen abroad include a minimum level of pressure for communities, or appropriate standards in terms of interruptions to supply and restoration of water, or in some instances, standards around sewer flooding to properties, for example. So very consumer-oriented. Performance requirements are a very flexible tool available to us. So that, and I always think of these as designed to support improved performance in the organisation. So we can require particular investments to be made. We can require organisations to consult with us before they take a decision on investment or on a program, to carry out a particular cost-benefit analysis approach, to apply a particular risk management approach. So that tool is quite tailored, and in a world where councils are deemed by are deemed to be very close to their consumers and answerable to their communities, that tool is designed to support improved performance in that kind of context. We also have, if designated, the ability to apply price quality regulation. I know that when organisations and people think about economic regulations, this is often where they go straight to, that the Commission will set prices, minimum or maximum prices, and minimum or maximum revenues. So that's not a default tool available to us. That's something that is only available after designation, other than for water care. So after their charter finishes, we will set a price quality path for them. And then it's useful for you to know that our regulation applies to water and wastewater services initially. It could apply to stormwater services in the future if there's a requirement for that also. So we are currently consulting on foundational information disclosure. Wellington Water was designated as subject to foundational ID by the government. It's quite a light-handed form of regulation, and what we've set are very targeted disclosures for Wellington Water. So we've found that they already do publish a lot of information, but it's quite hard to find. And we've also found that there have been 4 or 5 studies on Wellington Water that have highlighted the problems that exist with them, and we're asking Wellington Water to report on their progress against an action plan that sets out which of those recommendations they plan to act on in the coming year. So I've already had people say to me that they assume that foundational ID will be like ID, and the answer to that is no. And also, foundational ID is asking for some historic information, which we're unlikely to do under our enduring ID. So that's sort of us for a starter, but I'm sure that you have more questions, and I'm very happy to take those today as far as I'm able.
Thank you, Charlotte. Well done. That's a very concise presentation. Folk, do we have questions for Charlotte at this point? Yes, Rob. So Councillor Rob Telfer here, Charlotte. Go, Rob.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, Charlotte, right at the start of your presentation, you mentioned that you had input into setting the price for Fonterra. Can I just have a bit more clarification on that? Because as a company, I would have thought that the price is set by them. Like you mentioned that you were involved in setting that. How does that come about?
Sorry, I'm going to just repeat that question because the sound is not very good in the room. So you're asking what our role is in dairy, is that correct?
Yes, in dairy.
Yeah.
With the setting.
So unfortunately, I am not an expert in our role in dairy, but if you do want me to send through some information on that, then I can arrange for one of my colleagues to do so.
Yeah, okay. It was just around why.
Yeah, absolutely, no trouble at all. We'll get that to you today.
Okay, market dominance, but yes, there we go. Other questions for Charlotte? Charlotte, I just wonder, could you just, it doesn't matter about, I was interested in the ID, the information disclosure. You said where or when necessary. What determines when is it necessary?
So I probably said where or when necessary in relation to additional tools that we have. So the information disclosure will apply to all organisations of all form and all sizes. Other tools we would expect to apply where we see risk or harm, essentially, to consumers. So if performance is poor in terms of quality, or if performance is poor in terms of financial delivery, based on the information that we're collecting and the other information that organisations are required to publish, for example, your water services strategies and your associated governance documents and accountability documents there, that's when the Commission would look to apply it would look to kick off the process to consider the additional tools.
We probably could quickly agree there are some probably reasonably well understood definitions of what constitutes poor performance. But is that defined? Is that actually defined in the Act, or is that a judgment call on the part of the Commerce Commission? Is there an objective measure is really what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the answer to that is it is not defined in the Act. So the Commission will form a view on the adequacy of those things or not. We have not yet done that, I'm going to be really honest. A part of that is because the Commission's a very evidence-based organisation, and we will be looking for information about water and wastewater services specifically. So I suppose we consider that the water service delivery plans are a first point in that process. But, you know, some people would point to perhaps the information provided by the NEPM to Tamara Arawai, without that being audited and without understanding the quality of that information. The Commission would be reluctant to make decisions on the basis of that, which hence is why we also require the audit over the information that's provided to us. So we're a pretty empirical oriented organisation.
So there will be a requirement clearly to provide you with the relevant data, but it's going to be based on conventional, I'm thinking of financial data, gap-based information. There aren't going to be the disclosure reg type equivalents that's existed inside the electricity industry.
So I guess we saw our discussion technical paper is a bit of a shot across the bows in that regard. So whilst our initial disclosures could well be gap oriented, I think it's fair to say that we have to go through a process of determining whether we will apply financial capital maintenance and establish a RAB, and whether or not we will do that for all organisations, or whether we will only do that for organisations of a certain size or who are expected to move on to price quality regulation. So I certainly wouldn't rule out regulatory accounts in due course. I also look at, the fact that we will be asking for water and wastewater accounts separated, and in a way, to me, that is a form of regulatory accounts. But you're right, if they're gap consistent, then that does make it more straightforward in the first instance.
Brilliant. Okay, no, that's good. No, it's interesting to see how it goes. And by the way, I accept the fact that you're probably building and funding as much as local government does at the same time, so I understand that. That's interesting.
That's very kind. We can't make decisions until the law passes either, which is the slightly awkward thing.
That's true as well. Look, James, I appreciate you guys as management, but I would. It's brilliant to have Charlotte here. Are there any questions that you guys would like to ask Charlotte as well?
Charlotte. Hi, Charlotte. It's Pauline, CFO here. Just there's a couple of things, and I guess it's a little bit technical, but it allows us to get ready for what we need to do and deal with it. The first one, perhaps, is the ring fencing. I noticed that you gave a number of things associated with it. You said particular asset, expense, project or program. The only things with it, and most of that, fine, we record it and we do that and separate it. The issue is kind of to what extent is the expense? Is it like designated like it's a treatment? Is it designated as collection, disposal? Or will it be more granular, in which case the degree of how we actually set that down is going to take a lot more requirements?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Pauline. So hopefully I can reassure you by saying that in the first instance, we'll be considering the ring fence at the water supply organisation level, right? So our requirements will not be more granular than you've just described, because our main interest is, in the first instance, is the water organisation ring fenced, and are you as an organisation happy to certify that that's the case? And I think for those councils that are keeping their supply in-house, that could, for some of them, that will be a challenge in its own right. I've spoken to Selwyn recently. They've found that there's been all sorts of fish hooks that they've found as they've separated out their water CCO, and how they've had to set out those contracts and how they allocate costs between the different organisations. So the first thing that we'll be asking for is how you've done your cost allocation and how you have defined that ring fence for yourself. The ring fence when it comes to things like expenses, projects, programs, again, I would expect us to utilise that tool if we see there's a problem. So organisations I've worked with in previous years and in previous pasts have, for example, set aside a budget for renewals every year that they've not spent on renewals. And that's gone on year after year after year without any investment in pipe renewals, and you end up with a catalogue of errors as a result. And I'm not actually talking about Wellington. And so if we saw those kinds of things happening, then that's another example of where we could apply that tool in a more granular level. So we're not going to start off in that kind of space. But if we see, again, that in my personal view, and that's not a commission decision yet, that would be a risk to consumers in the long term, and we see evidence of that in Wellington, then that's the kind of example where we may choose to step in and require that ring-fenced revenue that, in this case, it already be set aside in a budget to be spent on the things that the organisation has said that it will spend it on or ought to spend it on to meet, for example, quality standards. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. I just have one more question.
Yeah, sure. Just one is good.
You've said, and just for clarification, so it's kind of good, that it's only going to apply to the ring fencing at this stage to water supply and stormwater.
Wastewater.
Sorry. I'm thinking ahead what the next part was. But you said stormwater not at this particular point. Do you have, so basically we're saying from the 1st of July 2027, you're not expecting to see the degree of ring fencing that is with stormwater as with the others?
So I guess we probably need to be a bit careful here that I think in the accountability documents that the water organisations are required to produce, I think there might be a requirement that ring fencing of stormwater is carried out. We'll have to see where the Bill 3 lands on that. But our role is in monitoring and enforcing that for water and wastewater services. So as a creature of statute, that's where we'll be starting. If you're going to ask me when stormwater might be designated, personal perspective only, very personal perspective. There's a 5-year review of the whole sector and its legislation planned. I would see that that's the point where that gets revisited, but that's not to say that there won't be changes in policy positions or problems arising, other legislative pushes that see that stormwater comes to the fore earlier than that. So very personal view, but again, not something that our disclosures will cover in the first instance because our legislative laneways are water and wastewater to start with.
Brilliant, thank you.
Tim, sorry, Tim. Tim Gafford, perhaps introduce yourself, Tim, please.
Yep. Hi, Charlotte. Tim Barry. Long time since we've spoken,
Yeah.
but lovely to see you. Yeah, it's been a hard route, hasn't it?
It's not to say too much, Tim.
Yep. Anyway, a couple of quick questions. We're initially looking to be an internal standalone, but likewise there'll be other small CCOs as well. Is there anything that ComCom are doing in terms of the ID tool or building anything of that nature to assist in our reporting process, and then how that moves into your data management
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. So it's our intention to provide, we call them schedules. One could think of them as Excel templates, right? Ideally data-oriented Excel templates, and I think sometimes I've given an example of our fibre schedules for organisations to use. Our initial approach will be to not make those compulsory. And the reason for that is we don't want to impose a burden where organisations have a different reporting style and prefer to use that. If we find that that results in an unwieldy burden at our end, then we might need to make those compulsory. But in terms of, I guess, if you want to see it as a support or a tool to enable you to provide the information in a clear format that you can audit and or have audited and certified and provide to us and your consumers, then yeah, absolutely that will be there. The other thing I'd say is, look, we're aware that at this point in time, economic regulation is quite an abstract concept. I totally understand that. We will publish our initial ID requirements shortly after Bill 3 passes, and I appreciate that's not going to be a great time either with the water service delivery plans due and then council elections. The 6-month timeline that the government's imposed on us to finalise those doesn't really give us any wriggle room on that consultation. So that will be a good chance for people to become familiar with them and ask questions or provide insights. And then once we finalise those requirements next year, I have told my team that I would expect that we would be running some technical sessions for those staff who are being expected to set up the systems to collect the information to provide to us.
Thanks, Charlotte. Additional question, you mentioned a 5-yearly review. Do you think that'll be the cycle that ComCom sort of lands on, a little bit like the AMP cycles that you ran in?
So that's actually a review not our price review or of ours specifically, but it's a review that the ministers have agreed on of local water done well, right? So that's the scheme it's in its entirety. If we set price paths for, well, when we set a price path for water care and when we set price paths for other organisations, the law provides for quite a large window for us to set those price paths. And I think that whilst, again, we haven't taken any decisions, setting a long-term price path based on poor information, I think is not something the Commission is likely to do, right? So our preference is really to get organisations to improve the quality of data that they have available to them for their decision making to improve what they do. If there are instances where additional interventions required, then obviously the quality of work that we can do is better if the quality of data is better as well. But nevertheless, the timing of those sorts of things is still very up in the air.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. That's great.
Thank you. Is there any other questions for Charlotte? Charlotte, that's great. I think just in terms of our time, that we probably need to move on. But that's been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you very much for having me today. Very good to speak to you.
It's actually starting to show the reality of what water reform will bring in one way or the other. And actually, it's been a very should we say, pleasant way in which you've raised, a regulation with us, which is very helpful. So thank you for your time this morning. We're glad we could welcome you, and it was great to have you on board. So have a good rest of the day, please. Thank you.
Great. All right. Enjoy your day too. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Charlotte. I think just for the purposes of our minutes, we should probably pass a motion that we accept the presentation. Thank you, Fred. I'll second that. Can I put the motion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, it's carried. I'd also like to move that we go back into PX, the remaining final item. Thank you.